Hey y'all, welcome back to Ryan and Robert Rants. Today we are back with our final episode of the ranked Mission Impossible franchise. We made it to the promised land. For those of you
Yes.
who, yes, high five, man, high five. We did it. We
Woo!
did it. So we made it to the end. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, we decided to rank all so far 7 Mission Impossible movies in order using a tier list that Robert was able to come up with. He was able to get that put together. So thank you, Robert, for your hard work on that. And yeah, so what we're going to be doing is today, which one will we be finally discussing, Robert?
We will be discussing Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 of 1.
Heavy emphasis on that. And this is the seventh entry
Entry, yes.
into the franchise. 7 movies in. So, like I said a little while ago, we've covered the previous 6. Definitely go check those out. And if you are planning on proceeding to move forward with this, we are going to spoil this movie. So if you haven't seen the movie, definitely go check it out. Come back, get in on this conversation. But aside from that, is it my turn or your turn, Robert, to do the summary? Because
I think
normally we'll do a
it's
summary, then we'll do the beat by beat breakdown, our out of 10 rating, and then we do the tier list. But
I
again,
think
since
it's
this is the
yours.
seventh one, is it my turn?
Yeah. You did. You started it off with the first one, and I think you were the
Yes.
odd one. I was even.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, and of course I am dressed for the attire. This is the most Mission Impossible shirt that I own. So
This is
yeah,
just
well,
I woke this
we'll
is just my I woke up look and just didn't bother. There
no, you're the gritty Mission Impossible
you go.
reboot when they have to go darker. They're
Yeah.
like where this is light, funny with dark moments. You're like the gritty Dark Knight reboot of Mission
Right, right.
Impossible,
You're
street
Sam Raimi
level.
Spider Man. I'm the Amazing Spider Man.
Your Mark Webb sweater.
Yep.
But yeah, so let's go ahead and just do a brief summary. Like we said, this is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 of 1. It's the seventh
Yes.
entry of the Mission Impossible franchise. So for this one, it feels very much like a continuation, but also a departure and a one-off thing. So this is probably the most modern of the Mission Impossible movies, whereas the villain itself is not what you would think. The villain itself is actually technology.
Yes.
So an AI known as the Entity is starting to take over various things around the world. It's very Age of Ultron in the sense, and honestly, it kind of looks like Ultron when we first meet him. So the whole thing about the entity is now the world is at a race to try to get control of this entity because whoever controls the entity controls the world. So by doing so, they need to get access to a key, a cuneiform key, which has 2 separate keys that go together to form almost like a cross. So Ethan and his team's mission is to get a hold of this key for their government. We also have some returning faces with Luther, Benji, Ilsa comes back. We also get a return of my boy Henry Zerny as Kittredge
Who is
back in
now the
action.
director of the CIA.
Yes, who is now director of the CIA. We also have some additional cast that we'll talk about in a second as well. But yeah, it's pretty much just the race against time to try to get a hold of this key that gets a hold of this lock that honestly pretty much controls the entity itself. But they dance around what it does throughout the whole movie. But like I said, I digress. We're going to be getting into it. So I do want to preface the movie. Robert and I did see this in theaters in RPX. Unfortunately, I got sick during the movie, so I missed a good chunk of the middle. So when I got back, I was a little confused about what was going on because it does take a really weird turn from when I left the auditorium to when I got back in. So I was very confused the rest of the movie. Um, the opening production companies, it's only 2 this time.
Yeah.
It's Paramount and it's
I'm
Skydance.
gonna say
And it
Skydance,
feels
yeah.
like Yeah, and if I don't know if you noticed, it feels like it's sped up, like it's
A
being
little bit,
fast forwarded through it.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and then from there we get to the opening scene, which that as well does feel a little sped up too. And we open on the Bering Sea with coordinates and dates, which I did write down February 29th. So this occurs on a leap year. At 12:01 hours, it says ANA DYR standard time. Um, so because of where they're located, I'm almost certain Antarctica time, or not Antarctica, but as far as like the North
Time
Pole.
like area, like yeah, the general geographic area.
Yeah, like they're up over there. And yeah, of course, this opens on a submarine. This is the Russian Federation K-599 Sevastopol, and they're conducting Operation Podkova. And this is day 74 of them out and about conducting this. So the opening is literally the opening for a Hunt for Red October, down to the Russian transitioning to English, because they do start speaking in Russian at the beginning, and then you hear it almost like digitally change to
Yeah.
English, and they do something. I don't know if you've seen Hunt for Red October, but it's literally like what they do. They're speaking in Russian, and then they transition into speaking English, like in a really similar way. So again, with the 90s references, speaking of, the Dutch angle shots are out of control in this movie. They're very out of control. And then the music feels very classic 90s as well, like just with that opening and what we talked about off camera a little while ago about the action adventure
Yeah.
cinematic feel. Um, so the whole purpose of this, what they're doing out there, and I wrote this down. He said that the active learning defense system we are testing continues to operate flawlessly. One might say miraculously. We are navigating under the Arctic ice cap by dead reckoning. He said it.
Said
In
it.
5 days. He said it. And 5 days from home. After 25,000 nautical miles, the Sevastopol has deliberately approached every navy in the world and remained completely undetected. The Podkova, let's say it like that, stealth capability has exceeded all expectations. We are at this moment the state of the art of war, the most fearsome killing machine ever devised by man, and we are impossible to find. So that's just to give you a taste of like what they have going on at the beginning with the submarine. Now, while they're conducting this test, they do come across, another submarine, and they're like, "Oh my god, they're doing this. They're getting ready to fire. We're getting ready to fire. We're taking evasive action. They're taking evasive action." So it's sort of escalating at the same time. And I don't know if you noticed this, Robert, in the background when they go into that mode when they're getting ready to attack, in the background when they say that they're being provoked or attacked, you can see the entity in the background, but it's red.
I did
Yeah.
not notice that. No.
Yeah, I noticed it because so I watched this 3 times recently. The first time because I was trying to take notes, but I ended up just watching the movie. Second time I took notes, and then the third time there were some notes I missed, but I wanted to go back and get them. But yeah, the on the first go around or the second one, that's when I had realized it. And, in the midst of them doing this, they're, firing at them. They decide, okay, we're going to fire a torpedo at it. And then it just disappears. And
Yeah,
the
I was
guy,
gonna
the,
to add on to that. When they're first they said they were given the distance of the ship, right, or the enemy sub or what. I think they said
yeah.
like 5,000 meters or whatever it is, and
Mhm.
they're like when they're looking at the radar and they're like, no, that's too far to and for this kind of like what is it like this kind of detail, and then all of a sudden you see
Yeah.
the radar change and it got
Just,
closer. And I'm like, that's like when you rewatch movies like this and you kind of get a tell, it's like, okay, well, that was the entity learning. Like, you can tell that's the entity learning, hey, I made an error here. Like, okay, too much detail at too much distance is gonna like get them to like start thinking about it, so that you can see like the entity just moving it closer. But like, all right, is this, you know what I mean? It was kind of like learning in
yeah.
that moment. And you don't catch that kind of detail the first time. This is a movie you'll have to rewatch to catch all those details, especially when it comes to like artificial learning.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't even think about that as well of, that's why it did it. I did find it interesting that all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, it moved." You think like
Yeah,
that would have been a red flag in their mind, "Oh, okay, maybe let's give it a moment because it just
it
changed
just
itself
jumped
and we
like
witnessed it."
5,000, like whatever it was, meters, or
Yeah.
I think it was meters or whatever it was, the
Yeah,
distance
because 'cause it'd be
measurement.
like it'd be more believable if it was like a quick thing where it was like, "Oh, I thought I saw something. Oh my god, now oh my
Yeah,
god, they're right in front of us," but it's like, no, they're watching the screen. It's clearly over here. You
and then
watch
it
the screen
moves.
change to where it's closer. Yeah, and then they're like, "Oh my god, now we're gonna do it." Like, it's
But
sort of like
that shows like, they have this AI entity on their vessel, but that kind of shows the I don't want to say the superiority complex of man, thinking that they're always in control.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it kind of,
that's
yeah, that, and he, like, later on, the guy even mentions like there's a ghost in the machine.
yes, and that's just what I was about to say. He has the line where he said, "This is why we have sea trials. There's a bug in the system, a ghost in the machine." And
Yeah,
I like when he comes to the realization right before he says that, he's like realizing, "Oh my god, like it worked.
yep,
Like it's learning, it's doing what it needs to do." And then it turns out that that missile that they fired decided to come back
yep.
and it takes them out. And I will say that it blows up the submarine. When it's knocking the torpedo out, in the bay and it knocks those guys down, that looks pretty good.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it
that'd
looked
be
it
a
looked brutal.
rough way to go. Like having a giant torpedo land on you like that.
Yeah, and then, this is when, it implodes, it starts sinking, but then we get the bodies floating up to the surface, which I think is a pretty cool shot.
Yeah,
And
it's
then you have the music going in the back, which you very subtle hints of a choir. It's like,
yeah.
we wanna do a Russian choir, but we're not going to, which they
We don't
really
want to
held
be
back
in
on
your
it.
face. They probably like just toned it down. They probably like slowed it down. But
Yeah,
it's like
because that
it's a
would have been
brutal
funny had that
opening,
been the opening shot when they pull up on the submarine, just "Ah!"
right?
Russian Federation music. But what were you saying?
It's a brutal opening, like when you think about it. Like
Yeah,
this is like the
it's
first like 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes of the whole movie. It's like it's pretty brutal.
yeah, it's one way to open the
Yeah,
series. Like I'd say probably as brutal as the first one, maybe? Like as far as the mission goes, maybe not the opening, but like the
yeah,
mission itself, that brutality. So yeah, no, I do agree with you on that. And then this is when we cut to Amsterdam and we're getting a food delivery. I really expected like, I think what would have been cool would have been like it turns into Home Alone for a second, and Ethan's just in the back. Just leave it on the doorstep and get the hell out of here. But yeah, so Ethan's doing, just hiding in the shadows and stuff like that. This guy's coming in for a delivery, and then what does he ask for? Designator, right?
yeah, something like that. And that, yeah, it's like a
This is the
code
first time this
sequence.
is used, though, right? This is the first
Yeah,
time Designator's been used and introduced into the series.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Because I
and then
mean,
this
this
is
is the first one we actually see actually like almost actual recruiting.
yeah, where the oath
Yeah,
is brought up, and then I did write down the oath. We live and die in the shadows, for those we hold close, and for those we never meet. And he tells them, "Welcome to the IMF. You made the right choice."
yep.
And then this is when he sits down. The guy's like, yeah, like you said, it's recruiting. Like he's like, oh, yeah, this like he's still learning to what to say. But this is when we get the tape recorder. I like that we go old schoolness tape recorder. We ain't going futuristic. And then we hear my boy, "Good evening, Mr. Hunt. It's been a long time. Kittredge, Henry
Kittredge
Zerdy's
is back.
back." Yes, and I did write down what he said. He says, "Our lives are the sum of our choices. We cannot escape the past. 30 years ago, you were offered the choice: join the IMF or spend your life in prison. Because of your unique talents, your unique natural talents, your government forgave you, but we will never forget. Just as you will never forget the death that brought you to us all those years ago. This is to remind you of your oath and allegiance to us. Stakes of this mission are higher than ever. Your habitual rogue behavior will not be tolerated." So I want to preface that they say the choice like 67 times throughout
Mhm.
this movie. The choice, the choice, the choice. And the only thing I kept thinking, especially because it's when Tom Cruise says it, the choice, there's a certain way he says it. And the only freaking thing I can think of when he says it is Interview with the Vampire. I'm going to give you the choice I never had. Like that's all I hear when I hear the choice throughout this movie. We also get a flashback while he's talking about this to his past, and all honesty, probably a hot take, but this whole episode, I'm gonna be bringing up a lot of stuff. The flashback to his past feels way too late to add this to the series. The same goes with the oath. It feels like we're trying to create this lore that's always been there, but now we want to introduce it. And like I said, I feel like it's a little too late in the series for that. Maybe had they done something like that in 4 or
Maybe.
5 and then we have
I
it
mean,
established,
3
but
would have
right
been the
now
perfect time to do it because he was
yeah.
the trainer.
Yeah, like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I didn't even think about that because he was already in training mode. You introduced that, but you know what I mean though? Like it feels
Yeah.
too late in the game to start introducing stuff.
Like,
And
I think
what's your take on that?
I think with the flashback to the past, they kind of want to, they're going forward like to the end of the franchise, and I think they wanted to kind of tie everything all up in a nice little bow, like to make like everything in Ethan Hunt's entire career is leading up to this moment. And honestly, when I saw the marketing for this movie, when they showed like the flashbacks to the in that trailer, like I really thought like they were gonna try to introduce like this villain as like maybe another culprit of what happened in was it Prague and Mission Impossible, the first one? Because I mean,
Yes.
it was it the setting, the lighting, like everything was like kind of like gearing towards like, okay, maybe this was the true mastermind in Prague or whatever it was. Like, maybe
Yeah,
he's the one that,
give him a Puss in Boots, Humpty Dumpty,
yeah,
reveal. I was there all along, and it's just him
exactly. Like
just
he's the one that
turning, like taking the mask
flipped.
off or just turn Galitzin.
Yeah, yeah, like he was the one that flipped John Voight, in the end, like to whatever betray the team. Like I thought
Yeah.
that's where this was going, but it's then that you find out later that this particular scene happened before. This is what happened before that, and this is probably right when Ethan got in trouble, and that's when he took the oath.
Yeah, and I feel
But
like that was a big misstep for them. What you just said right now is exactly what I was thinking they should have
yeah,
done. If you're gonna tie it in, tie it back into the first one. Don't go before that where you're trying to
yeah,
set up a prequel and you're trying to set up, Ethan Hunt origins.
version, yeah,
Like we don't need that. Just tie into what already existed because if it's not already established and you're at the end, it's sort of like okay, we're getting ready to close up shop. Oh, wait, let's go back to the beginning. Let me show,
yeah.
like, no, like, I'm already, like, I'm
I
taking the
will
suit
say
off, man. Like,
when it comes to that, since this was supposed to be a part one, I will reserve that and see how it concludes the overall story and what was supposed to be part two. So, because I kind of have to look at this movie as one, as it's an individual standalone on how it stands up by itself, and then how it kind of, with when you add, part two to it, then I got to see how those two tell an overall story. So if we what we learn in the final movie is a decent story, then I can be like, okay, I get it. But until then, because we don't know, I'm just gonna be like, it was a little weird.
so
But
with
it
that being,
it could
yeah,
change my opinion with the final movie, but it can also further my what I'm already thinking right now.
yeah. So with that being said, then part one, which is this one, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll bring it back. I'll bring it back up at the end. But yeah, like I said, there's a lot that I have issues with the story
Mm-hmm.
on this one. But yeah, so to go back to the mission right now, like we talked about in the summary, is The government is searching for the key. Its purpose and importance is none of your concern. What should concern you is the involvement of your friend Ilsa Faust, which she has a bounty on her head for $50 million. They say that
Well
she killed
done.
a courier. What's up?
I said, well done, 50 million.
Yeah. She's got a number. And it says that she killed a courier in Istanbul, and they believe he was carrying one half of the key they're searching for. They don't know why she chose to interfere with the situation, and the same for her location. The US government put a price on her head, and bounty hunters have been sent to find her. They never bring a fugitive back alive. They're believed to be headed to the Arabian desert's empty quarter to find her. He must acquire the key and deliver it to the IMF. What happens to Ilsa is up to him. So this is when we cut to the Arabian deserts, and it says somewhere near the border of Yemen. This, and we get a franchise first. Ethan has a horse.
Yeah. He's
I
like,
will
you know
say
what?
this.
I liked it. That was the way he goes. This is what he said. He's like, you know, that was the good thing I liked about the Mummy. So I want this to return.
Oh God! Speaking of flops, one of the only movies that I have ever walked out on in the from a theater in the middle of the movie. One of the only movies that I still to this day have never finished that movie. We will have to do it
Yeah.
eventually. I will suffer through it for y'all, the audience, again.
Yeah.
So yeah, and this is when he's searching for Ilsa, and then we get Ilsa with an eye patch and the rifle. Oh, dude, it looks so baller.
Yeah.
She looks so cool with the eye patch.
I know, right? When I
Um,
saw that in the trailer, I was like, wait a minute. Like, because there was no context. Like, it just shows her like an up close with the eye patch. And I was like,
yeah,
wait, is she going to lose an eye? You know what I mean?
which
But
would be
then, like,
sick.
and then it makes sense. Like, okay, she's a, you know, yeah, she's
Awesome.
sniping. Yeah, well, yeah, she's sniping. She's sniping some people.
Yeah, I will say that this sequence feels very, very Call of Duty, and
Oh,
it
100%.
yeah, if
When I
this was
rewatched this yesterday. That's exactly what I was like. You see the down scope type thing, and just picking off people just and how they fall. I was like, this is very Call of Duty.
yeah, and tell me this, dude. Tell me if you agree with this. If this movie had come out like around 2006, this scene would have been a level in the video game adaptation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we would have had Dead Reckoning Part 1, the video game, and it
Hmm.
would have been like the whole movie, which I really do miss video game adaptations from movies. Those are pretty fun.
Yeah.
Italian Job.
Like,
So, yeah, the scene plays out. Do you have anything to say about the shootout scene here in the desert?
um, no, not really. It's pretty straightforward. I did read that the scene where Ethan's like on the horse and he's like petting the horse or whatever it was, like that took 4 days to shoot because they only had like an hour each day to try to get that take because of how like the sun was.
Yeah,
And they didn't want to overwork the animals. So I was like, oh, I was like, that's kind of interesting. Like, I don't know if they shot it like in Yemen or the Arabian desert, which would be wild
yeah,
to me. But I mean, it definitely does feel, like you said, video game esque, especially when they get to the I guess the rundown kind of buildings and just how
yeah.
they're just
Just the
picking
zoom
everybody
in
off.
of like the whole area of the village. You're like, oh wow. Like, yeah, I'd post up there. I'd be taking people out. That would probably be a spawn point right there.
Yeah. But like the
But yeah,
opening shot was very it's like you said, like I've always like I said since what Ghost Protocol, how the locations become like the characters also like you just see
yeah,
this wide open expanse of a desert, kind of like we saw in Ghost Protocol, but you feel like the isolation that Ilsa had put herself in just to kind of like hide herself.
yeah, and where and how far she had to go to do so. And from here, the scene does end, and we cut to Washington D.C. to an intelligence community briefing where we enter a murderer's row of character actors.
Right?
Dude, freaking Mark Gatness as NSA, Charles Parnell as the NRO, Indira Varma as DIA, Rob Delaney as JSOC, and Carrie freaking Ellis, which I didn't. That was a shock when I forgot he was in here as is it Denlinger, the director of national
Intelligence,
intelligence.
yeah.
So dude, like literally character actors galore.
Yep.
like in this scene. I wrote down some of the lines of what they say, at least the beginning. It says this entity has multiple personalities, at times behaving like a computer virus, then a tapeworm, then a botnet, distorting any and all digital information with which it comes in contact. Once infected, nothing recorded, stored, or transmitted digitally can be trusted as fact. And the fact that not one person is saying this, it's like each one of the character actors has one line, then it goes to the next one, then it goes to the next one. So it's like a really disjointed message that they give, which
So they
I
can all get
get.
paid. They can all
Yeah,
get
for
paid
real.
more.
It's like I get paid by the word.
Yeah.
You want me in this movie? But yeah, we get that, and they're having a back and forth about what it is, and they're discussing like how it's infiltrated all these different facets of life, and it hasn't done anything. All it did was just go in, leave a fingerprint that could be traced, but it was more to just make a statement like, yeah, I got
I'm
in there.
here. Like I'm here. I'm gonna return. Like, yeah.
Yeah, like you see how easy I got in, I'll do it again. And that's pretty much it. And they're talking about, what are we gonna do, like, do we kill it? And then this is when we get freaking Kittredge entering the scene. You don't want to kill it, sir. You want to control it. Like, only Kittredge would have that mindset of
Right.
what it is. Like, it's about what's best for us. Like, he's thinking big picture, but he's thinking very nationalism, like us,
Yep.
the US. What are we going to do to get control? So, he starts describing what it is that they're after with the entity, and that it's the two halves of a cruciform key. The Russians believe it has the power to deactivate the entity. A buyer's passing through the Middle East within 72 hours. He's believed to have one half of the key. One thing that can verify one half is the other half, and Ilsa is believed to have the other half of that key. But this is when we find out that Ilsa was killed out in the desert, and that Kittredge had sent Ethan out there to retrieve her, but he's refusing to answer who Ethan is because
Yeah.
it's deemed as classified, which I found interesting that Kittredge was willing to like
Yeah.
not willingly say who Ethan was, especially because his thing is to use Ethan. Um, and the fact that he was just like, no, like I'm not going to tell you who it is, but there is someone that I sense that I believe, and I like Denlinger's line. What is it that I'm not supposed to know? Like I'm the, I'm the
Yeah. Like,
director of national intelligence.
and
What is
that
it
was
that I'm not?
weird to me. It seemed like everybody else in the room knew what the IMF was, except the director of national intelligence.
Which makes me wonder if it's because of plausible deniability.
Maybe.
So as long as he doesn't know, like just get the job done. I don't need to know how it gets done, just as long
Yeah.
as it does. So if he's brought up,
Unless he's
to
like
a
newly
congressional
elected,
hearing
or
or
yeah,
something.
unless he's like a newly elected or newly appointed to that position. Maybe he
Yeah, because
hasn't got
he's
all the
he's new to the
briefings.
series. Yeah,
Yeah, so
because
maybe
we've
he doesn't
never
have
met him. He's
all the briefings. It's like, when you get, newly elected president, like they're not privy to everything, right, like right from the get-go.
yeah,
I'm sure it takes, months and stuff to learn all the nation's secrets.
yeah,
Like
and I
who
love
shot
that.
JFK?
And I love that Kitcher's just like flat out says the IMF. He's like, what, the international,
Something, yeah.
bank? He's like,
Bank,
no,
right?
no,
It's
not
like
the
something.
bank.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I love that the NSA and the NRO are getting all scared that he's revealing IMF. They're like, Mr. Kittredge. And he's like, and what did they do exactly? And they're like, it's just as implies what the rest of us can't. And they're like, well, how do you get a hold of them? And like, we more or less
Leave
leave
word.
word. And when there's a mission none of you can handle, you just leave word for a nameless man. Hope he gets the job done. Is that it? Should he choose to accept it? Only Rob Delaney could deliver it that way, like where it's cheesy, but it's also like breaking the fourth wall,
Yeah.
sort
Like
of
they have to
thing.
choose to do this mission.
Yeah, and then during this whole scene, we're getting this guy in the background, like he's bringing in a case. We see him. He comes in, and I like one of the other guys makes like this weird look at him, like dude, why are you late or why aren't you here? And he hands Kittredge this case, and he's like, Mr. Kittredge. He goes back behind, and while they're talking, Kittredge, finally opens the thing. He looks in it, and he sees a mask, and he turns like a little face mask like this, and turns around. You see the guy, which in the trailer, you see this guy in the trailer.
Yeah.
And when I first saw it, I thought he was going to be like a henchman or
Same.
like a bad guy or a villain because I love those glasses.
Same. Yeah, it looks
Like,
creepy.
talk about 90s, dude. Those are 90s
Oh yeah,
glasses. Then he's got the face mask on and he throws the three bomb. We get Joker bombs
pretty
in this
much.
movie, man. And the freaking homage to the Batman museum scene with just the masks and stuff like that, which makes Kittredge Vicky Vale. But honestly, the only thing that's missing from the scene is just the candles and Prince blaring through a boombox. I mean, like, why not? We're already hamming it up with the 90s references and the overused Dutch angles shots. And like I said, the sunglasses. Why not? Let's go for it at this point. But we're like trying to figure out who this is. And then we get face reveal. Boom.
Ooh.
Ethan Hunt. Because as Kittredge mentioned, they're like, where's this guy? Did you get the key? Like, he's refused to come in. Which I do like that he says that. And the first thing that Kittredge says, I understand. You're upset. Not upset, Kittredge. You wanted me to listen. This is me listening. So right here, I feel like is a reference to the first one.
Yeah, it's definitely a
When
callback.
when he's like, Kittredge, you've never seen me. What
Yeah,
does he say? Angry or upset, right?
I
In
think
the
so,
first
something
one,
like that. Yeah, I think
he's
he's
like,
you never see
Kittredge.
me upset.
Yeah, and then again, call back to the first one, and then I like he immediately drops. He's like, "All right, I put the bounty on Ilsa's head. I also told you how to find her. I didn't ask her to steal the key. She did that for her own reasons, but that's the pattern, isn't it?
Hmm.
You get her out of trouble." And she always found her way back in. I like that he starts out like very panicky, like he's gonna go off on him, and then he changes his tone, like, now I got you.
Yeah,
And that's Kittredge's thing, is that you don't ever see him panicky like that, because he's always like calm and collected, like, oh, like snarky but very arrogant. And I like that that's where he flips it in the middle. He's like all panicky, and then he's like, but that's the pattern, isn't it?
yep.
It's always like, I'm turning it on you, like, oh, you think you got me, but now I'm going to use something against you. But they're talking about that. And then this is when we find out that Ilsa's alive. Ah,
Woo!
she's not dead. She faked the faking of her death by putting that one person just up there with the blonde hair,
Yep.
just like that, and just shooting it up. And we do have the line. He says, "I'm not going to apologize, Hunt. It's my job to use you." And I didn't catch the last part, but I think he says something along the lines of, just like it's
Your job to get
your job
used.
to get used. Um, and they have a back and forth about what's going on, and Ethan says, no one should be trusted with the control of the entity. I plan to kill it.
Yep.
And he's telling them, Picture just saying, whoever controls the entity controls the truth. And then he goes into detail about what it's going to be like. This isn't going to be a normal war. It's going to be fought over resources, over all these different things. And
Like water, clean air. Yep.
yeah, and then I like that it ends with he's like, the old days are over and whatnot, and you're gonna need to choose a side. And I love what Ethan says. He says, I'm on the side I've always been on. Stay out of my way, which is like, oh, I do like that they have that, because it's like Ethan staying true to himself. He's like, I'm not about taking sides. I'm about doing what's right. I'm about the greater good for
the
everyone, for the one person.
yeah, the person who can't sacrifice one for a million. Like he tries to save everyone.
Yeah. And that conversation's really intense, but I like that. It's because we haven't gotten interactions like that, like, really too much throughout the series.
Hmm.
We get it definitely in 5 a little more. We get some in Fallout, but I mean, like I said, this is why I love Henry Czerny so much, is because him and Tom Cruise interacting with their characters. Like they just have that little tete-a-tete where it's like the back and forth, the quid pro quo ness of it. And this is also where it is confirmed, like you said a little while ago, Kittredge is the CIA director. We finally get it, confirmed in this one. And the whole Ethan escaping is Kittredge, which
I
I
just
did
like
like.
it. He's like turns around. He's like, and how do you plan on getting out? Oh, of course. When he sees him putting the Kittredge mask on.
Dart in the neck. And I was hoping we'd get at least a line from Ethan, like as Kittredge, like something snarky. But and then we
Nah, the
cut
look
to the
was enough.
credits.
The look was enough. He's just like,
Yeah. Like 28 minutes to the credits,
yes,
dude.
I know. I paused it
20
this time just to see
Yes, it's like 28:04 if I remember
something.
correctly. Yeah, dude, 28 minutes to the credits. This is the longest it takes to get. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Climax
Mm-mm.
by Gaspar Noé or Noe? No. It's a dance movie. You'd love it. It has Sofia Boutella
Okay.
in it. It's all a dance movie, but the credits don't start until halfway into the movie, and the movie is going for like
Jeez.
almost 40 or 50 minutes, and then you
Jeez.
get the credits. But yeah, dude, 28 minutes to the credits, we get introduced to Haley Atwell's second build. And like
Yeah.
you said at the beginning, part one.
Part one.
Yeah, they really put a lot of stock in
They,
part one.
I mean, I know you can't, I mean, you can change it like on streaming, but you can't change like physical media or like, can they just go back and just change like on streaming and the IMDb and everything else and just call this Dead Reckoning? Like
Yeah,
just get
so
rid of the part one.
they have done it like when they do TV broadcasts. I don't remember for which movie, but there was a movie that I saw where they had changed something.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it can be done, especially now that we're in the modern age where, technology allows you to really do some stuff. Like I don't see why they wouldn't be able to change it now for broadcasting or streaming, but
Yeah. I mean,
that also would
most people are
depend
gonna
on the
watch
rights
it.
too.
Yeah, most people are gonna watch it on streaming now, anyways. Like, just change it. Like, yeah, people are gonna go. The diehards are gonna go see it in theaters. But like, now that we know that this last one's not gonna be called part two, just drop the part one.
Yeah.
And then
Just Dead Reckoning. It never should have been part one.
when
It
you
should have just
release
been
the
Dead
box
Reckoning.
set, when you release the box set of all the movies, you can continue just call it like you can just call it, Dead Reckoning. You don't have to have the part one because I plan on
Oh
buying the
god, I
box
hope
set.
it has the subtitle Dead Reckoning Part 1 on the side
No,
of that disc.
no,
Yes. Don't
I'm
alter
buying
history.
I'm buying the box set.
Yeah. So did you have anything to say about the Washington scene or
Nah, I mean, I did. I mean, like you said, like Cruz and Cerny, just they're great in the scene, and it's almost like you can kind of again, it calls back to their one on one in that restaurant in Mission Impossible One, where Ethan was the hotshot agent, and he was like kind of like the director or just the man in charge, and now Ethan is. I mean, he's still like Kittredge is still the man in charge, but Ethan is more seasoned. But and even though like Kittredge kind of flips it and still acts like he's in control, like we know Ethan's like we know what Ethan's gonna do. So
yeah, Ethan's just like
yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, this is when we cut to Abu Dhabi. Hi Shea Wigman
Yep.
as Briggs. So my first introduction to Shea Wiggum was in the movie Risk Cutters. I don't know if you've ever seen Risk Cutters.
Mm-mm.
It's definitely an interesting movie, but his character is really funny in that movie. If I remember correctly, I think he's doing a Russian accent
Oh jeez.
in that movie, but he's so funny in that movie. He's so funny. And he probably had, but I mean, he's also becoming that guy that just shows up randomly in movies and TV.
Yeah.
Machete
Right.
is one of them. So in the movie, he plays Briggs, which I didn't realize his character's name was Briggs until I went back and looked it up because I don't think they say it maybe once
Maybe.
in the movie, but it's never really mentioned. Now he does not know Ethan personally, but he does know him. As far as what he says to his counterpart, Degas, who's sort of his coworker. or partner. But I did write down what he says at the beginning because I feel like this is right up there with Alec Baldwin at the end of Rogue Nation when he's talking to the Prime Minister describing Ethan Hunt. So he says, "Listen up. An American operative with a grievance against his country is missing and has malfunctioned. His agenda represents a threat to our national interests, and he must be neutralized at all costs. Anything in this man's possession is of vital importance and must be captured intact. The man himself is expendable. He is not to be underestimated. A master of infiltration, deception, sabotage, and psych warfare. For all intents and purposes, ladies and gentlemen, a mind reading, shape shifting incarnation of chaos. So, for your safety and the safety of those around you, do not consider him secure unless you have driven a wooden stake through his open heart. This is not a drill."
The delivery of that entire thing that by him is it was perfect. I was just like it just kept going and going and going.
Yeah, it's not as eloquent or as like,
No, it's very
as
crude.
delivered as, yeah, it's a very crude. This is like, this is essentially what and he's more or
Yeah,
less saying it like this, like, um, but like I said, it just reminds me, it's like the complete opposite of Alec Baldwin's delivery.
yeah.
He's the manifestation of destiny. Like, this is just like, no, this is what this guy is, straight to the point.
Yep.
But then, we get Ben, almost said Buther and Lenji, Luther and Benji, come in, and then they have their little back and forth. I don't know if you wrote it down, what they say, or, their discussion, but they're doing the same thing that they're doing in the previous scene with the other character actors, where each one has a line and they're just going back and forth
Yeah.
delivering it. I don't, again, maybe you're right, and it's like, this is how we get paid,
Maybe.
and this is how they had to do it. But it did feel out of place for it. Like, I feel like if they would have just had like a normal conversation, it would have been more. But I mean, this movie takes some weird directions
Mhm.
and paths. But I do like Benji's line when he was like, "Well, it was bound to happen sooner or later." Like, it's like they know what it is. And then the whole thing about they're there to try to get the key because the buyer should be coming through. And that the lighter, I didn't realize, because I didn't pay attention like the first 5 times that I watched this, that the lighter is a Geiger counter, because I
Yes.
was paying attention to everything else, because I'm like, oh yeah, the lighter comes back, and I forgot, oh yeah, it's a Geiger counter to give off, if the key is legitimate or not. And then we also get the glasses as well that give the virtual reality, which
Yeah.
honestly, I wouldn't mind a set of those glasses. It'd be
Right?
pretty
They're pretty
cool.
cool.
But yeah, so we get that. They're discussing what they're going to be doing, and then this is when we get Isai Morales as Gabriel entering. We don't know his name is Gabriel, but he's entering. Welcome to the franchise. And he's starting the movie off with a suspicious bag. He's got to
Oh
kick
yeah.
the action off somehow. So here's a suspicious bag. And then this is when we start getting even more callbacks to the first one, where Benji's saying, "Hey Ethan, can you please tell the Net Ranger that about writing code?" And then he says Phineas Freak as well, and I'm like, "Oh, haha, I get it. The first movie,
Yep.
yeah, callback." And then the whole messing with the strike group using the AI from Luther, and Benji just being like, "How did you do that? No one is safe from Phineas Freak."
Yeah.
But again, this is the only time that they're mentioning his names like that. Like, if it was something that was more throughout the franchise, it'd be like, okay, but it's pretty much like a throwaway line
Yeah.
in the first movie. But now it's like, okay, now we want to start making callbacks. But like you said,
Yeah, we
it's
didn't get those
circling back.
callbacks. Yeah, we didn't get the callbacks earlier in the franchise. We're getting it now because they know it's concluding. Like this was the part one of the finale of the conclusion. So it's like let's just make all these callbacks. So maybe in part in the part two, we'll get some callbacks to Mission Impossible 2.
At this point, do a hot shots, just call it part deux.
Yeah, right.
At this point, just put part deux on it. But yeah, I mean, and honestly, little too late. Too
Yeah.
little too late. Like it feels like it's like it feels cheap. You know what I mean to do that,
Yeah,
and
because the only
especially
ones that
because
are gonna
it's
get that are the people who really, like, watched and loved the first one.
yeah, and it doesn't feel natural. Like it feels forced. It feels like, oh yeah, remember? Like it feels more like key jingling than it is like, oh hey, here's a little nod or
Yeah.
something to where people are like, ah, like, oh man, that's cool. This was more like, you see it,
Mhm.
you see it.
The
It's
Leo
like,
meme.
yeah, yeah.
The
And this is when we find out the buyer is Otto von Bork, Swedish national, I believe is what they say. So Ethan goes to tail him, and as he's watching him, someone walks by, and he looks away, he looks back, and the key's gone. He turns around, and then this is where we get Haley Atwell. Hi, Haley.
Ooh.
As Grace, because
Grace.
she says, "Oh, you can call me Grace."
Grace.
So we don't really know what her name is throughout this entire movie. We're just
Yeah.
calling her Grace. And I don't think we're ever gonna find out what her actual name is. I think she's just gonna be referred to as Grace in this one and in the next one as well. But we
I
do
think so,
find
yeah.
out from the glasses that she's jewel thief, extortion, art, like
Rap
all this
sheet
different
longer than
stuff.
my arm. Yeah.
And his arm is pretty long. Can
Yep.
confirm.
Mhm.
And then this is when we find out that that suspicious bag is going to the buyer's plane. And then this is when they start having that back and forth. He's like, what if that's what the entity wants us to think? So from their conversation, they know that, we can't really trust technology. We can't trust anything, only ourselves when we're in person is the only thing that we can do. So Benji decides to go off and figure out what's going on with the luggage while Luther's navigating the both of them. And I'll say this about Haley Atwell in this movie: it is so weird seeing her play someone that's not Peggy Carter,
Right.
just because I feel like I feel like she got out when she did, but it's almost at the point where she's just typecasted. She just is Peggy Carter.
Yeah.
Especially because you're playing someone, from like the 1940s and stuff like that. So she acts like a certain way, but she acts very 1940s as Peggy Carter. So I'm just so used to seeing her like that. So seeing her in a movie like this where it's modern and she's talking different and acting differently, it throws me off a little. But then her and Ethan collide, and then they have like a back and forth, like he's trying to hit on her and she's like, I'll scream, and he's like, please do. And then again, call back to the first one. Ethan brings back the hand magic from Mission Impossible 1,
Yeah.
where he grabs the key, and then he gives her a choice. He's like, you're either in or you're out. You could make some money off of this. I just need you to do this. You're good at what does he say? Pickpocketing. How good are you at put pocket?
Something, yeah. Basically
Something like
putting it back in the Swedish guy's pocket. Yeah.
yeah. So he gives her that option, and from there she decides, but this time she pickpockets the lighter from him. She's like, ah. So I do wonder, because the glasses that he's wearing for the AI are for the environment, the VR.
Augment, yeah.
Yeah, the augmented reality. I wonder, since they're aviators, if it's a reference to Top Gun. I
Maybe
wondered,
after
like,
the
because I was,
huge success of Maverick.
mm-hmm. Which if you haven't seen Top Gun Maverick, yeah.
Yeah.
Super off topic, just a little side story for that, and I'll probably tell it because I know we'll go over it eventually. I took my mom to go see Top Gun Maverick in theaters, because growing up, the first Top Gun movie was really, really, really important and big to her, and she showed it to us when we were kids. So we grew up watching the first Top Gun. I can quote that movie from beginning to end, and that soundtrack is fire. But when I took her to see Top Gun Maverick in theaters, like she almost started crying at the beginning, just because the opening of that movie is pretty much the opening to the original Top Gun, and the fact that they almost pretty much recreated it
Yeah.
but modernized it, like it really, like it was a great movie experience for me just to witness that and be able to give that to her. So yeah, if you haven't seen Top Gun Maverick, definitely check it out. But back to Mission Impossible. Um, this is when we cut to Benji. You know, he finally finds the luggage, and it turns out it's a cylindrical device, nuclear, and there's 5 minutes on the clock. So he's like, you know, how do I diffuse this? I don't have anything. And Luther's like, you know, well, you're gonna have to find something. The fact that he starts going through the luggage and he just happens to
Yeah,
find
of
the
course.
tweezers, you know, and the scissors like within the time frame,
Yeah, it's
especially in Abu Dhabi.
probably like a mani petty kit or something like that.
Yeah. But I mean, he finds it pretty fast. And then it turns out he needs to complete a psychometric test. So the more that he answers, the more that it learns from it. And this is, you know, when we're having the back and forth. Luther's doing a back and forth between helping Benji, helping Ethan, helping back and forth, back and forth. And then this is when the music starts to feel very 90s with the piano, the dur, 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 dur,
Hmm.
dur, like with the score. I don't know if you picked up on that. But yeah, I was doing that a lot more. And then this is when we cut back to the buyer, and we also get your girl, Palm Clementif. Mantis is in the
Mantis from the
house,
MCU,
and she's playing Paris, which how James Bond of them.
right? A
um,
French woman playing a French woman named Paris.
exactly. Yeah, I was like, this is where it gets a little Bond right here. But yeah, it like I said, it throws me off not seeing her as Mantis, very much like, you know, seeing Haley Atwell as Grace. Like it takes some getting used to, because the only other thing that I've seen Palm in, which is a very blink and you miss it, is the remake for Old Boy, which don't waste your time. See the original, so
Hmm.
much better, so much superior. But yeah, she, you know, she has a gun and she's smiling at him underneath, you know, some newspaper. But you know, we she kills the buyer, but we don't see it happen.
Yeah,
But we know that it does. So, you know, in between them going back and forth, that's when they Luther's like, let me tell Ethan what's going on, that there's a nuclear bomb. And you know, he tells them, he's like, we didn't want to bother you, and he's like, a nuclear bomb is something you bother me with immediately. He's like, how long do we have? 20 seconds. And he's like,
and just
oh,
like,
he's like, okay, let me think. Like, give me time to think it out. And you know, he leaves Grace, you know, over there because they find out that the buyer was killed. So he's like, no, let's get out of here.
yeah,
And you know, the bomb's revealed to be empty. Grace pockets the key. um Gabriel pulls a Batman because Ethan does see him in the
and the
glasses,
and the
and then he
reflection.
takes him off.
It's in
Yeah,
the yeah, it's in like it's kind of like a shop where there's like a rack of the sunglasses that have that mirror, so you can always check yourself out wearing them. And yeah, he sees Gabriel in that reflection. Like you can remove, Gabriel, like the entity's been removing him from the cameras, but you can't, like in person. It's still gonna be there.
exactly. Exactly. And then Ethan terminates the mission immediately. And you've
Yeah,
said this before, like Ethan does not terminate
no,
missions. Like, and I think this is the first one where he's like, no, abort mission, get out. Just walk away. Walk away. And then this is when we get Ethan running.
running franchise staple.
Um yeah, French, you gotta have it at least once. But we get it real early, which, you
Yeah,
know, kudos
yeah,
to them.
get it out of the way.
And then we cut, you know, back to the CIA. I like them having to go old school analog tech. And they do say Corona spy satellite, which probably in reference because of how delayed this movie was in
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
development
With
hell,
COVID,
so to speak. Yeah,
so
this
the
movie was in.
the first day of shooting, I think when they were going to be shooting in Venice or something like that, the first day there is when Venice shut down. And then of course, we had like Tom Cruise, spending like almost half $1 million of his own money to like rent a yacht or rent a boat for everybody to isolate on.
Yeah.
So I mean that was very well documented. But I want to say like that whole airport scene when he like aborts mission, one, the score, the music in that whole scene, like it really adds like a sense of dread, and it's like the tension in it of it is really well done. I think this the music, and I think it comes back later. Again, another scene with Ethan running, but like the music in this one is pretty good. I think it's like a step above, at least from Fallout. But I want to say, like, when Luther says, is that what the entity wants us to think? So if again, we find out like that cylindrical device was empty. There was nothing to detonate. So had they ignored it and Benji and Luther stayed in, or like Benji stayed there helping Luther, they wouldn't have distracted Ethan, right? And Grace wouldn't have pickpocket everything, and then the mission wouldn't have been aborted. They probably would have succeeded there. But because the entity knew what they would do, because of course you're going to go after a mysterious bag that might have a bomb in it, right? The entity knew. So again, that's how it was always like, 6 steps ahead of them.
Yeah. This is all about, trying to learn about them
Yeah,
and, how can I use that against them?
yeah,
And this is when we cut to Rome because as Grace had pickpocketed, she goes into the Rome terminal because that's where the buyer was supposed to be going. So she gets on the plane. We cut to Rome. She ends up getting picked up by the police with all these passports, and she does a little sleight of hand by pulling out one of the paper clips, and they say that her lawyer is there for her. At this time, we're also getting Gabriel's entering the scene as well. He's in Rome. We get Briggs coming in as well, so everybody is in Rome now,
yeah.
and we're
They're all
all just
converging.
converging. Yeah, so we find out that the lawyer or is Ethan, and he's yeah, he's profiling Grace in this scene. He mentions you're an orphan, you about the finer things and stuff like that, and you're just constantly living, but you don't have a life. And she even says, you can't blame a girl for trying to make a dishonest living. And he says the line, I'm paraphrasing, but he says along the lines, with the key, you wouldn't have stolen it if you had known what you were getting into. Again, a
Which again,
callback to what
call back.
he said to Luther in the first movie and where his trust was built with Luther because he trusted him and he had gone through that with him. So, I mean, again, there's steps of like the first one where there's sort of like paralleling, where it's drawing parallels between it. But at the same time, we're also getting Gabriel talking to the one in charge,
Yeah.
and he's saying he's Interpol. They're having a back and forth, and then it's such a cheesy line. He's like, "You're not Interpol," and then he says something along the lines of, "I am if I wish to be. I can be anything and know everything."
Yeah.
Like the religious zealot, like just I'm gonna say nonsense that he carries through the movie is so over the top
Yeah.
in this movie that it's hard to buy into him as the villain. This and I'm gonna talk more about the tone towards the end, but this is where it starts diverging in tone, and we get
Mhm.
this weird amalgamation of different tones with the movie. But it's very, very cheesy James Bond is what it feels like. But yeah, during this scene, this is when they're like, okay, we're gonna escape. Joker bombs come back because Briggs gets into the room and you can see the smoke clearing. Ethan drops the mask and everything into the trash can, and then this is when Grace accuses him of being a pervert to distract them so she can make an escape again. And then I love Ethan just standing there, just like, no, no. She gets into a cop car. She cannot drive to save her
Nope.
life.
Nope.
Um, but yeah, and then Ethan's catches up with her, steals the bike,
Just follow the
and then
wreckage.
yeah, just follow the wreckage. And he's like, "Hey, stop, stop! I need you to stop." She rolls up the window and she gets hit head on. And this is when we find out that Paris was the one that did the head on collision, and she's just the little like thing where she's just like getting mad about trying to open the door and stuff like that. And then this is when the guy's coming up to the window, and then you see the CGI bike looks so janky and bad, dude, when it's getting thrown into the other guys. But then it cuts to Ethan, grabbing the guy that's outside the window and slamming him through the window. But there's a cut when it happens, and it's a really bad cut because it's like it grabs him, it cuts, and then he's coming from another angle when he goes through the window. So, that's not the it's not the only cut in this sequence though that I noticed. So, there was that, they decided, okay, like, hey, like we got to get going. Paris is there, Briggs catches up. They have a back and forth with, the police there, and we're like, hey, we're what did they say? Special operations,
Something, yeah.
I believe, is like, hey, Degas is trying to translate and stuff in Italian, and then this is when Paris pulls out the gun and she just starts killing everybody.
Just
Dude,
mows everyone.
those headshots that
Exactly.
like on those guys. And then you think Briggs, gets the drop on Ethan. So the first time that I saw that, when we saw it in theaters, I thought it was because Ethan recognized him. Like he knew him. But then
Yeah.
watching it this most recent time, I realized it's because he has the drop on Ethan. And Ethan like looks like, okay, like this is it. But then Briggs gets up to
Yeah.
start firing at Paris. And I was like, okay, he's just like,
Yeah.
no, like I have a gut feeling that you're probably a good guy, sort of
Well, not
thing.
only that, I
And
think
then
there's like more pressing issues at the moment. Like Ethan's not
yeah.
actively trying to kill him, but she is. So it's like, you know what, maybe let's take out everything else and then we'll decide, afterward what's going on.
Which is ironic because Ethan hasn't tried to attempt make an attempt on his life at all. He's been the one trying to do it. So yeah, this is when they get in the car and then he handcuffs Grace because he's like, no, you're not going anywhere. But he handcuffed her the wrong way. So
Wrong
now
ways.
they have to drive opposite. And then this is when the car chase starts. And I love the backing up is just taking all four of those doors out.
Yeah.
And we get Paris in the tactical truck and she's just like mowing everything down. And then this is when we get the safe car app with that interesting face ID recognition thing that it does. Oh, why don't we have that technology yet with these
Man, I
Apple
don't I
updates,
don't
dude?
I don't know.
As
It'd be
far as we've
nice
made
though.
it,
Yeah.
like you think it would be. And then this is when we get the Fiat, which I no. It's a Marvel Fast and the Furious joke. It does not belong in Mission Impossible. Like it's too out there. It's too campy, it's too cheesy for that cuz now we're going from Batman Returns to Batman Forever, Batman and Robin territory now with a joke like this.
Yeah.
And I get that it's played for laughs, but again, like I feel like the laughs need to be for the characters. We need Benji to be
It's
making
like,
these
and it's
jokes. We
bright
need
yellow too, right? Like yellow's gonna stick out. Like like
yeah.
I know a Fiat in Italy will that's a good car because it won't stand out. But you make it bright yellow,
Yeah.
like just make it traditional silver or black or something like.
Yeah, and make it cool, not
Yeah,
cartoony. Make it cool, like, oh yeah, you think it's gonna be, a Fiat is small and it's cartoony, but then he gets in it and it turns out it's like
yeah,
souped up and stuff like that. Like then that would be a subversion that would be more akin to something you'd expect from a Mission Impossible. But they literally like go, like he stops to pause and be like, oh, let me, windshield wiper gag, putting it in reverse, driving and then hitting something immediately. Like it's too comical.
yeah.
And again, like I said, this is where the tone starts shifting. We're getting jokes and stuff like this where it's not for this franchise and it's not for this
Yeah,
movie.
it's a movie about like the fear of advancing technology, right? Like we're kind of in
Yeah.
that age now where I mean, just look at what you know AI and Chat GPT and all that other stuff is, and then like in a few years, where is it going to be? So like we're in that age of advancing technology, potentially replacing jobs and all this other stuff. And so this movie is a more extreme version of that, where this rogue AI is infiltrating like a nation's secrets and weapons and nuclear warheads, all that stuff, right? Like the possibilities are endless with it. And then it's a very tonally serious movie, and you want to throw these like quippy jokes in there for honestly no reason, just to get
Yeah.
a chuckle. Like
Yeah.
again, you have Benji for that. Like Benji can do that. I mean, that's pretty
Exactly.
much Simon Pegg's whole persona.
Yeah. It's literally you said it perfectly. The story is always serious, but it's the characters
Yeah,
that bring the levity. Not the other way around, not the visual gags, not the things like that. Like I said, that's a Fast and the Furious joke, which speaking of during the chase, they're going through the town, they're getting chased by the cops, they're getting chased by Paris, and then they end up going down a set of steps. Is this not the same set of steps that we see in Fast X with the bomb rolling down?
Probably because that was also in Rome, right?
If
And
I
I'm not
remember,
gonna.
yeah,
Yeah, I only saw because that they yeah it was they had to explode the bomb right before the Vatican, right?
yeah.
Honestly, I only saw that movie that one time in theaters, and that was enough for me.
Same. I'll see it again just because it's so cheesy that that's a movie
If
that leans
we,
into the cheese right, especially
yeah,
with Jason Momoa as the villain. That was
I
like
mean,
we've already gone
look,
so cartoony,
yeah,
like
like
just lean
comic
into it.
booky, yeah, like.
Yeah.
But I mean, Jason Momoa had. I mean, I mean, if we ever do a ranked series for that one,
Oh,
that'll be
we're going
fun.
to. We're going to because that's been on the books for almost 3 years now. So we gotta.
we might have to preface like how we rank those movies
Yes,
though.
there's gonna be a ranking system for that one.
Like
But yeah,
yeah,
like
but okay,
but I
but
wanted to make
anyways,
sure I brought those up because I was like, we literally just
it's
got that in
probably
another
those. Yeah,
movie.
it's
And then
probably that same.
we get a baby carriage trope
Yeah,
too to throw it back even further. I'm like, oh wow. But dude, when Paris comes down with the truck, that landing on the road looks so bad.
yeah,
It looks so janky with the CGI. And then
definitely
again,
not gonna do that practically.
yeah. And then
At least
again,
on location.
yeah. And because, we can't not have it. This is when we get the whole fiat going in a circle and oh, get it? We're playing it for laughs and it just keeps going on way too long. And then finally it's like, okay, now we're gonna turn.
At
Now
least it was
again,
Grace driving. That's what made that
yeah,
part at least a little bit believe. Like it wasn't Ethan, it was Grace, and we all know she can't drive. But at the same time, like I feel like you have to have some skill to be able just to do, you know, donuts like that around a. But anyways, but
yeah.
at least it was her driving, so it was like it wasn't
Because
Ethan. So it's see if it was just that part and they didn't do the everything else before it, I think it would have played better, right? Because Grace is not
yeah,
Ethan. So if you just have her like basically panic driving, like not knowing what to do, because
yeah,
you can get that what do they call it, like whiskey throttle, right? Where you're like
yeah,
where you basically just get stuck doing it and you're just like whatever. And I mean, I could imagine her character doing that. If everything else didn't come before it, this probably would have been, this part could have worked a little bit better than what it actually happened.
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And then speaking of how I was talking about the editing error, there's a scene after they go down, they cut a corner to go left. Now, when they're in the Fiat, there's a car on the corner, and when they cut back to Paris and she's following them, the car's not there. It's like completely different traffic, but that car, I'm like, how did y'all miss that?
Yeah,
I'm like, that's a big thing. Um, and then
that's the
this
issue with
is
with scenes like just. I mean, I could probably. I've seen Bad Boys 2 enough where that bridge scene, I can probably
yeah.
spot every editing error in that whole thing. But
But see with that one has so many cuts to
yeah,
different things of what's going on. With these movies and these chase scenes, they don't really have too many cuts because they want you to stay with the action
yeah,
as long as possible. So when it happens and you see it, like now that I've told you, go back and watch it, you're not going to be able to unsee it because it's once you see it, it's very
it's over.
noticeable.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not one of those quick ones where it's like, okay, we have cut here, cut here, cut here. It's like you have maybe two cuts
yeah.
during that scene, and it's like, ooh, yeah, that's noticeable. But yeah, this is when we're coming to the end of the chase scene. They're getting cornered down the tunnel, and Ethan, throws it in reverse and kick in the Mission Impossible music. Again, that feels very James Bond, like something they would do, like, oh, we're cornered. Doo, 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 doo. Like
Yep.
then you'd hit the music, but we hit the Mission Impossible theme. And they end up going down a tunnel backwards. Paris is freaking out and she just like rams the police. Briggs shows up and he's like, whatever, we lost them. And this is when we get, the Fiat ending up on the train tracks. And Grace handcuffing him on the tracks is a douche move, and
Oh
then
yeah,
throwing the paper clip, like, right
yeah.
after, but we do get another 90s, early 2000s reference. We get a Final Destination homage with the train. And speaking of that, the train crashing into a car 90s trope, dude.
Oh yeah.
When's the last time you saw a movie that had that, where it's just you just see a car on a train track practically, not CGI, just getting blown
I
up,
mean, just the one off the top of my head was Final Destination,
right?
where what's his name
Minus
parks
what
on train
happens at the
tracks.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah, minus what happens at the end of that scene. But yeah, we get that, and then Ethan is escaping, holding the steering wheel, very rush hour 90s. And then this is when Benji and team arrive. Hi, Ilsa.
Ilsa, what?
Dude, this is when I noticed too that she has almost no lines in this movie.
Mm-mm. It's all
Almost
like,
no lines.
yeah, it's all like facial expressions and
It-
stares.
yeah, it's all like, and just nodding.
Yeah.
They were like, we can only pay her so much to be here. But I know she's even gone on record too, saying that she just spent a majority of the time just waiting around. And what did you say that she could have filmed?
Yeah, she mentioned because around this time she was filming Silo, and she was just like, "Yeah, we could have done 2 seasons of Silo in the time we did this movie, like
Yeah,
you know, Dead Reckoning." So I was like, "Yeah," because yeah, I mean, so I get that from an actor's perspective, and I think that's why a lot of them are gravitating towards like streaming and whatever, because they do want to work. So it's like the more I think it's like a sense of accomplishment. Like I can do more in less time than a brief, I don't know what, like 15 minutes of screen time, if that she had in this movie.
yeah. Well, also around this time, she's doing Dune and Dune Part Two
Yeah,
and whatnot. She's gearing up for that. Which, if y'all haven't seen Dune Part Two, I don't really care for the first Dune. I think it is really boring,
I
but
haven't seen
it's
Dune
great to
2.
look at, and I love Denis.
Yeah.
I love all his movies. See Prisoners as well, but Dune Part Two, I slept on for a while. I finally watched it. She's really, really good in Dune Part Two. Um, but yeah, we cut back to them, so they end up at a safe house and they're talking about, okay, the meeting's going down tonight, and look who's hosting. It's Alana, the White Widow herself,
Woo,
is
woo.
hosting this party.
Vanessa
And
Kirby back.
yep, she's back in action. And then we do get a funny line from from Benji, and he's telling Ethan, does she know who you actually are? Does she still think you're the notorious mass murderer John Lark? And Ethan's response, who says I'm not? Like, just that response I thought was funny. It is cheesy, but I was like, I'll give him that one just because it was real out of nowhere. And it's like,
Yeah,
who
I
says
felt
I'm
like
not?
that one could have been ad libbed.
Yeah. And then Luther saying, didn't she put a price on your head in Paris? And Ilsa, she did indeed. She and Ethan, they worked it out. You never did tell me how. And Ethan, can we continue, please? Like, I like that he's segueing from it, but it shows like they have. I love that it's like a little lovers quarrel thing. Like, you didn't tell me about her, Ethan. Like, you don't need to know about her.
It's like I knew about Julia.
Yeah, it's like you're the only one. But this is when we find out more about Gabriel, and that he's being erased from the camera, but he, like you brought up earlier, he was caught on the reflection.
Mhm.
And he even says the entity is protecting him. And Luther says, you saw him, didn't you? He said, I wasn't sure. Benji's like, well, who is he? And then we get the flashback to Gabriel killing Marie, who is never told who it is, but we know her from the cast listing that that's who she is. Again, this is going to tie back into what I'm going to say at the end, but yeah, we get the flashback, and he says that he's someone I thought died a long time ago in another life before the IMF, before I was offered the choice, and in a very real sense, he made me who I am today. And this is when we're starting to learn that Ilsa had received, since she's disavowed, she had received some information from some people she still trusts at MI6, who still hold her in favor, and they gave her information about what was going to be going on with the key, a little bit about Gabriel. And this is when we find out it's like these people that gave you the information, how did you meet with them? Was it in person? And then this is when she reveals that it was over the phone. And now it's like they realize it's the entity screwing with them, and Ethan's like, we can't be sure if anything is real outside of this very conversation. None of you should be here. And this is when he starts going into Ethan mode, which is, I can't protect all of you. Like, y'all are my priority over this mission. Your safety is what matters. And even he said, Elsa's like, Ethan, he's like, no, you don't know Gabriel. I do. It's not the killing he enjoys, it's the suffering it causes. And he knows the best way to get through to me is through all of you. And if Gabriel knows me, Luther, the entity, knows. Ethan, there's a reason he wants me here. There's a reason he wants you here. It wants you here. Benji, calling back to when they were defusing the bomb, who or what is the most important thing to you, is one of the things he's asked. And he's like, it's my friends. And Ethan's like, no, you all have to go. You all have to go. Benji, Ethan, what if it wants us to leave? Luther, like, you made us leave at the airport. Ilsa, and what if it wants you alone at the party tonight? Then I go alone. At least I don't have all of you to worry about. This is exactly why I didn't want to tell you, Ilsa says. And I love Luther's line, Ethan, you're playing four-dimensional chess with an algorithm. Benji, the entity knows who we are. Any move we make, it's probably considered it. Anything we do, we have to assume that it's counting on us to do it. And Luther coming in again with the solutions. If you want to beat this thing, you have to start thinking like it. Cold, logical, unemotional. Ilsa, if that key really does control the entity, Gabriel's the last person on Earth who should have it. Luther, she's right, Ethan. Gabriel cannot have that key, and none of our lives can matter more than this mission. And Ethan, in true fashion, I don't accept that.
Yep.
Like, I wrote down the dialogue from this scene because it's the most that it not only delivers what's going on with the story, it tells you who Gabriel is, it tells you a little bit more about who they are as individuals, and that they're like, no, and how far they've come in the
Mm-hmm.
franchise to where they're like, no, like, we're all friends. We all know that, we need to, like, just them saying it, just what Luther says, none of our lives can matter more than this mission. And I love that Ethan is still fighting it. I don't accept that. Like, I will not lose any of you. Like, he's
Yep.
willing to lay it all on the line. He's willing to
Yeah.
sacrifice his life for his friends, for people he doesn't even know. Again, they tie it back to the oath, but you don't need the oath to remind us of who Ethan is.
Yeah.
We've seen it, and it's through scenes like this that it matters. So for this scene, did you have anything you wanted to say about this scene, or any?
No, I mean, you get a sense like, yeah, that I mean, they are agents for the IMF, but at the same time, they are their own found family, right? So Ethan will not sacrifice his family for. I mean, he wants the mission to succeed and everybody to go home, like, or as much of a home. Like they all just want to live another day. But I mean, I think like it's these scenes, like this one, and then the one in Fallout, like after that he fails to catch Lark, and there Luther's telling Ilsa about Julia. But like it's these scenes that I think is kind of like what this franchise is all about in terms of who these characters are. Like it's these scenes that you get. Like, yeah, we can have all the stunts and the action set pieces, whatever, and that's cool set dressing, and it's fun and it's entertaining. But it's like it's these scenes that really build out the story and the characters,
Yeah, and
and
it's
these
the
are the ones I
dialogue.
enjoy. Yeah, and these are the ones I enjoy the most.
Yes, 110%, man. Like, this is the heart of the franchise.
Yep.
The relationship, the story, the back and forth, and it stays true to these characters, who they are. Like, you don't get a left turn from one, like, wait, why are they doing that? That's out of character for them.
Yeah.
It's consistent, and that's what makes it compelling. That is why we keep coming back to this franchise. Is for them, for these interactions. And again, that's why I love the first one so much, is because it's mostly dialogue, but it's within that dialogue you get to understand who they are and how passionate they are about what it is. Um, And, you know,
because
from
yeah, like
oh,
right after this, it's when Ethan is overlooking, Venice, right? And then
yeah,
Ilsa comes out, and they have their moment, and they're all kind of like side by side, and she's like kind of on his shoulder or in his like chest, and she's like, "I've never been to Venice before," and like right then and there, I'm like, it's not going to end well. You know what I mean? Like it's just
yeah,
that sense of dread. It's just like, I mean, but Ethan also
that
says he's never been
foreshadowing.
there. Yeah, he's never been to Venice, but it's just like this meeting is not going to end well.
Yeah, and that scene did make me wonder if that was ad-libbed, because it doesn't feel like their characters, like, that felt real, like, that felt
Yeah,
genuine, like, that was just them up there, and they were like, you know, "Let's try something because we need a scene up here." And I
yeah,
think that was a good scene because it also humanizes Ilsa, because, you know, she's like we've talked about before, she's gray but operates in the shadows. But when she's with Ethan, she lets her guard down. She's more like, "Oh my god, like, you know, I see this
yeah.
man for who he is." And Ethan's also letting his guard down a little too. Like he's, you know, like,
Because
"Yeah, you know,
she's
I care
she's
about
the
her."
other girl. Like when Luther says he's only seen Ethan serious about two women. He never mentions who the other woman was. It was Julia,
Yeah.
but Ilsa. It's alluded to that she's the other one, and then we
Yeah.
kind of we get that like she is the other woman that he allows himself to be himself around.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better.